This is from a childhood memory. Families are forever. Hurry up and get in the car, girls. We're off to a family reunion, Daddy hollered. What's that, I asked. You'll meet my whole family. Aunt Marguerite's your whole family, isn't she? Well, Sis won't be there today, but there are others, your great aunts and uncles. Why are they great? Because they're old. Mama nodded and pulled a face. We drove to Grandpa and Grandma Blaine's in Mighton. Their car's still here. Maybe they need help packing. Daddy stopped the car and went to the front door. He came out a minute later wearing his disappointed face. They're not going. Mom was sick last night. I don't want to go either, I ventured. Nonsense. It's a nice day and we're going to have fun. He looked at Mama. Right, Lorene? It's your family. Mama pursed her lips, opened her book and started reading. Would you put that goddamn book away? Can't we go somewhere as a family and maybe talk to one another? Mama shrugged. Daddy gunned the car and we screeched onto the highway. Nobody spoke. After a half hour or so, I asked, why aren't we there yet? We will be in a couple hours, Daddy said. Minutes later, I'm hungry. What's for lunch? Mary reached over, pinched my belly roll, and mouthed the word, Mary, Mama, Mary called me a fat ass. You girls cut out the fighting back there or I'll stop this car and give you a real what for, you hear? Daddy yelled. My God, can't we have one day without all this bickering? We passed the cedars above Duchesne and drove towards Strawberry Reservoir. Watch for deer here, girls. They're plentiful. Then, do you remember Mom's brother Frank, Lorene? The one that married Emily, Mama answered snidely. Daddy groaned again, pissed off. Mama turned in her seat. Frank was 60 years old and a bachelor. Then he married 40-year-old Emily, an old maid. It was the shock of Heber City when they had Gary. He's 8, your age, Dianne, and with parents the age of Grandpa and Grandma Blaine. More silence, more driving. Then finally down Daniels Canyon and into the camping area at the bottom. As we got out of the car, Daddy said, Dianne, Gary may be the only kid here besides you and Mary. Make the best of it, okay? He made introductions. I saw a kid hiding behind a woman's dress. He'd poke his head out and make a squeaky sound every few seconds. Smiling, Daddy said, that's Gary. Then, why don't you kids explore the place? There's a path to the river. You can get some exercise while we get the fire going. As Emily began tying Gary's shoelaces, Mary bolted down the trail and I followed. Daddy called out, you girls stay on the path so you don't pick up a tick. What's a tick, Mary? I asked as we trotted along. Who knows? Getting a tick's better than picking up that queer kid that stared at you. Dianne loves Gary. Dianne loves Gary. I hate you, Mary, and I hate that dorky kid. She ran ahead of me. I took my time singing softly, give Seb a little stream. Then I hurried because I smelled and heard the river. Just as I got there, Mary said, let's go back. Not yet, Mary, I just got here. That's tough, I'm leaving. If you don't show up with me, we'll send Gary the ferry out after you. Dinner was great. I ate hot dogs, yummy potato salad, pork and beans, and cake with pink frosting. They had all kinds of soda pop. I gulped down a big bottle of strawberry all by myself. After dinner, the men sat around the fire, picking their teeth and belching. Uncle Bob fell asleep within seconds. I can't eat like I used to, lost my gallbladder and ain't been the same since, Uncle Elmo began. Speak up, shouted Uncle Frank. I can't hear you over Bob is snoring over here. Just then I heard a loud bubbling noise and the men guffawed. Uncle Jack winked at me. That there were a big old frog, weren't it? I scampered over and stood by Mama. As the women cleaned up the dishes and put away the leftover food, they debated cold packing tomatoes. I processed mine 20 minutes, said Aunt Sarah. That ain't nearly long enough, countered Aunt Louise. 40 minutes or it don't cut the mustard. I always done 20 and it never hurt me or Bob, Sarah quietly murmured. Aunt Emily quickly changed the subject. Frank, he got one of them exams of the rectum last month. I've been after Elmo to get one, but he fights me, said Aunt Hilda, shaking her head. Says he's not about to let a doctor do that to him. My Frank said the same thing until that Louis Patry died there. of that prostrate cancer. He came home from Louie's funeral and headed directly to the phone, made the appointment himself. Mama snickered loudly, shut her book, and started for the restroom. I caught up with her. What's funny, Mama? There's no such thing as prostrate cancer. The word is prostate, she laughed. We walked back to the group. Gary was asleep with his head in Aunt Emily's lap. Look, Mama, he's sucking his thumb. In the late afternoon, we started for home. I still felt stuffed, and my stomach rumbled with indigestion. Daddy's driving didn't help. He sped up and slowed down as he and Mom fought about the day. She criticizing his relatives, calling them shallow and ignorant, and Daddy angrily defending them, although I suspected he felt the same way. Just get me the hell home, I thought. This family reunion is the stupidest thing ever. During the night, I woke with a yucky taste in my mouth. Warm, sticky stuff caked my pillow and my hair. I jumped up and turned on the light. Pink vomit covered the bed. Between crying and explaining, I showed Mama the scene. It's okay, Diane. Get in the tub and wash well and rinse your hair twice under the tap. Throw your dirty pajamas down the clothes chute and get a clean pair from the bottom dresser drawer. I'll make up your bed. An hour later, we were done. Mama, I must have vomited when I was asleep because I don't remember it. She smiled. I don't think she believed my story, but she didn't get after me. As I climbed into bed, I looked closely at Mary in her bed snoring. Did she come over, vomit on me, and then get back in bed?
This is a nonfiction piece called The Birds. If anyone would like to help and learn how to turn live birds into meat, it will happen very soon. Let me know ASAP if you're interested in helping out. I read my friend's matter-of-fact Facebook post and was immediately curious. I might like to come, I replied. I have the afternoon off. Not sure if I'll help, but I'd like to witness the process. I asked my wife Amy to drop me at his house about a mile from ours on her way to work. He lived in a part of our town that I'd never had occasion to enter, and I found it quiet and lovely with old homes lining the narrow streets. Several months previous, I was sitting in my office here at the library and browsing through a new book I'd purchased on how to butcher wild game. I suddenly, and very naturally, no longer wanted to ever again be responsible for the death of a fellow animal by eating meat. The urge was just gone. As I walked through the door at home that evening, Amy passed me heading out to a meeting. She mentioned that dinner was on the table, but we didn't have time to talk about what had happened to me. I didn't eat the meat on the table that night 18 months ago, and I remain a vegetarian today. I arrived at the driveway gate to my friend's yard and was invited back. As I stepped across toward him, I hardly noticed the small deposits of shit which dotted the entire area. My friend had just finished processing his second chicken, and the evidence was ample. Blood splatter on several 2x4s on the grass, a large pile of feathers, a card table spread with knives and various surprisingly colorful and neatly organized organs and feet, and 2 strings of intestine, one piled on the ground near the table, and the other stretched in a line about 4 feet long across the driveway. As I watched in intrigued shock, live chickens with blank looks in their eyes picked at the intestines of their recently dead companions to consume the bits of fat that remained. There was no easing into it. One early morning as I walked near the intersection of 600 North and 100 West here in Logan, I heard several crows squawking. At first I only slightly noticed them, but the sound soon became insistent, and I realized their noise was directed at me. The birds soon began to fly towards me in a semi-threatening manner. I stopped walking to see what was going on and discovered an injured crow in the gutter. Its leg appeared to be useless, and it also must have had a problem with its wings because it never attempted to fly. As I stood there deciding what to do, one of the other crows landed on a pine branch overhead and began raining sticks down on me. As I watched, the bird would carefully pull something off the tree with its black beak and then drop it. I got the distinct sense I was not welcome and that the crow in the tree was protecting the crow on the ground. Amid loud protestations from above, I did my best to move the injured bird across the street to a safer place, perhaps to rest and heal, probably to suffer and die. Another chicken was marked for death and was soon caught using a large butterfly net. I had no desire to help in any of the process, but I will admit to eventually placing my body in the way of the fleeing bird, thereby assisting my friend to catch it. If the poor bird's time was up, there was not much to be gained by a delayed end running around the yard in a frenzy. My friend's kill method was to hang the hen upside down by its feet from a tree branch with twine, and then to cut its throat in one deep slice. We stood about 2 yards back while it bled out in a steady stream, occasionally flapping wildly, which caused strange sanguine patterns to appear in the dust below. Suddenly the twine broke, and the half-dead bird fell to the ground. My friend exclaimed, "That's never happened before," and ran over to the flopping mass of feathers. He picked it up, but not sure what to do next, he set it down on the ground again and held it there until it was still. The head was removed using a serrated knife, and the careful gutting began. Over the last few years, I've come to strongly accept the reality of Darwinian evolution. It explains the variety of life on Earth better to me than other ideas I've heard, because it's based on evidence. We are animals, thinking, reasoning animals. We are family with all other animals, and yet we're different, or at least we try to be. I also consider myself a secular humanist, someone who believes we humans can solve our own problems. I've thought a lot about the avian paradoxes I witnessed, but have come to no conclusions. One group of birds, when not even in mortal danger, was happy to eat others of its kind. Another group, arguably more intelligent, tried desperately to protect its companion, even though it was likely to die soon. These questions arise. Are we humans better than these birds? Are we less than them? Are we more moral or less? I'm not a biologist or a philosopher. What I have seen in the animal world and the human world both disturbs me at times and at other times makes me proud. Is there any difference between us?
Really awesome community. Thank you, Star, for doing Helicon West. Star is responsible for this, for us having this kind of community. Okay, our next 3 readers will be Sarah Anderson, Dianne Anderson, and Preston Grover.
These 2 are my daughters and their first time at Helicon.
So my piece is called Metaphorical Pages, and if anybody can figure out what genre this is, please give a shout out. Says, my pages are blank. I am a star. Like all things, we begin and we end. We live and we die. We succeed and we fail. And today, I began. Someday I will finish my story and I will end. But in doing so, I will be giving a new star a book full of blank pages. I will fill my pages with stories of success, failure, happiness, anger, and adventure, all just waiting to be played out and set free. But now is not the time for waiting. Now is the time for making the best of this moment, right now. So excuse me, but I'm going to go fill some pages.
Maybe it was a prose poem.
Non-fiction, we do it.
So my piece doesn't have a title yet. So this is how it ends. Me curled up on the ground like a coward, a gun pressing its cold barrel into my spine. People say that my life should be flashing before my eyes, but it wasn't. I guess I didn't do enough to have that effect. I felt like the world was moving in slow motion, everything but me. I looked around to see the world, around completely still. Was I dead? I spun around to see everything frozen around me. Maybe I had just blacked out. Maybe this was all an illusion in my mind. Yes, I had blacked out, and in a few minutes it would all go black. My imagination would die with me. Was I ready? Well, was anyone ever ready to cease to exist? The people, the revolution. I hadn't even thought of them until now. If I die, they will lose all hope. Somehow, I had to wake from this dream and escape. That would certainly give the people the courage that they needed. But how? How do you wake yourself from an illusion? I knew I had to move quickly. So, how did I get into this situation? Well, that's a long story. I'm sorry for your loss, said one of my dad's random friends I'd never even seen in my life. Oh, I didn't really know him, I said with a half smile. He insisted, he was your father, you should have... Yeah, he left when I was 2. I was surprised they even told us he was dead. I never thought we'd hear from him ever again. Oh, he said, looking a little guilty, but not completely. He was holding a drink in his left hand, which I was sure which was heavily alcoholic. He wobbled away, and I watched as he fell, pulling another lady down to the ground. I rolled my eyes as I walked over to the tiny box that they said contained my dad. I jumped as I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned around to see my mother, her face red. She'd been crying. I didn't understand. I ran from the room, the building, the block. Why was I tearing up? I barely even knew him. He was a horrible father. Shouldn't I be glad he's gone? Then I froze. That sound, that boom, it couldn't be. I ran to the funeral home to see a pile of cement and wood, dust starting to settle. This couldn't be happening. Why? How? It was starting to get dark. I saw the sun setting in the distance. Surely the police had heard the boom and would be here soon. Having nowhere to go and nothing to do, I laid down and wet the ash and soot with my tears of confusion.
And then tip do that with your, there you go.
Okay.
That better?
Yeah. So I'm not his daughter. This is not my first time at Helicon West. All right. Sir. Yeah. Okay. So this is a poem about the tapir, and it's called Bastard. If I were to search among the green of the south, through trees and shrubs, and be choked by the humidity of Brazil or the Congo, I would stumble upon the tapir and think to myself, the fuck is that thing? The bastard child of a deer, pig, elephant orgy. Which one is the father? As it reaches low for berries, young leaves, browning fruit, I wonder how it tastes on rye. Then it will wade into the shallows, submerging almost entirely. I'd ask it confidentially, have you ever met the hippo? How is this beast not better known? Invited to all the best zoos, fairs, adoption shelters. And I think because the animal kingdom still thinks of bastards as lower beings. Who here has read All the Pretty Horses or The Road, or both, preferably? Cool. This is a poem that is the love child of the ending of both those amazing novels, and it's called Hummed of Mystery. The desert he rode was red, and red the dust he raised, the small dust that powdered the horse he rode, the horse he led. Once there were brook trout in the streams, in the mountains. In the evening a wind came up and reddened all the sky before him. You could see them standing in the amber current where the white edges of their fins wimpled softly in the flow. There were few cattle in that country. It was barren country indeed. They smelled of moss in your hand. He touched the horse with his heels and rode on, polished, muscular, torsional. He rode with the sun coppering his face and the red wind blowing out of the west. On their backs were the vermiculate patterns that were maps of the world in its becoming. Riders and horse passed on, and their shadow passed in tandem like the shadow of a single being. Maps and mazes of things which could not be put back, passed and paled into darkening land, not be made right again, the world to come. In the deep glens where they lived, all things were older than man, and they hummed of mystery. This last last one is a found poem from a podcast, and it's called Talk Like Writing. From NPR, ready for your interview? LOL. He's a linguist drinking Jamba Juice. ROFL. No one ever said speaking is more like writing. Words aren't even the most important part of it. Writing came along much later. It was common to talk like writing. It was perfectly natural. It follows then to write like you speak. Still, it represents some sort of decline, an emergent complexity. Language changes below the radar. It's a feast. TTYL.
Our final reader tonight will be Ron Jensen, and then when we're finished, if you can please help stack the chairs against the wall, we'd appreciate that, and thanks for coming, Ron.
Hi.
Ron.
Welcome. Great start to eternity. The love when you're next to me is a great start to eternity. You make me complete, my better half. We go together like a joke and a laugh. I'm around you, feel so blessed. I'm glad I can have you with all the ask. Being married to you, as sweet as can be, it's a great start to eternity. Welcome. Meaning of Easter. Easter happens every spring. The weather's warming out. The birds will start to sing. And what's going on now? The bunnies, eggs, and nuts of candy. All day the fine and dandy. There's a better reason for this important season. But tea is guns from the tomb. The glorious first Easter morn. It's good news for anyone who's ever been born. Of all girls jacked up, I had this Irish student who lived forever because he died for me and you.
Thank you.